Hello, I am 8mm Mauser Man, and thank you so much for watching this video. Now, before you go and leave an angry comment about how Lee Enfields are not actually the greatest military surplus rifle, something else is, or how you've been saying Lee Enfields were the greatest surplus rifle for years and now people are finally starting to listen to you, I want you to know that this video is going to be just like the video I did on Mosin Nagants versus Mausers, where I'm going to do one video talking about how Lee Enfields are the greatest military surplus rifle, and then another video about some of the shortcomings that they have. So stick around for that one in the future. But this video is about some things that I really like about Lee Enfield rifles. Now, I'm going to be talking specifically about the SML Lee rifles until the number 4 Mark 1s and number 5s. I'm not going to be talking about those really early variants. One, because I don't have any personal experience with them, and two, because they're just not that common, so if you own one, you are in the minority there. I also want to say that there are many varieties of military surplus rifles, and I have not handled all of them. I've handled some of the most common ones, though. And some of the features that we're going to talk about that I really like about Lee Enfields are present on other military surplus rifles. But what I'm talking about with Lee Enfields is that they have all of these features in one rifle. So the first two things that I want to talk about are things that are pretty common to all different sorts of military surplus rifles, and it's that Lee Enfields pretty consistently have good sights and a good trigger. I understand that sights are one of those things that are fairly subjective, but I really like the U-notch rear sight and the very fine front sight that the SML rifles have. But if you are a fan of peep sights, you are in good luck, because the number 4 Mark 1 rifles have flip-up peep sights. Now, both SMLEs and number 4 Mark 1s have a very crisp 2-stage trigger. So you pull it back halfway to set the trigger, and then you continue to pull. It does get a little bit harder, but as you pull through, it is very crisp. You hit a solid wall, and it's pretty light of a trigger pull. Granted, many other military surplus rifles do have a really nice trigger pull. However, many others do not. Now, Mosin Nagants are in weird territory because you will find some Mosin Nagants that have an absolutely fantastic trigger and others that you basically need to hit with a hammer to get the rifle to go off. The second thing that I would like to talk about is cock on close. Now, what I mean when I say cock on close is that on Lee Enfield rifles, you will notice that the cocking piece, which is this piece right here, goes back when I close the action. And then if it were to be fired, when I open the action, it barely opens a little bit, but then when you close the action, it cocks. This is opposed to cock on open, which this Mauser has. So I'm going to lift the bolt handle, and you'll notice the cocking piece, which is this little piece right here, goes back. Like that. Now, this has some disadvantages, but also has some advantages. In my personal experience, what I've found is that a good cock on close action helps you keep the sights on the target easier than a cock on open action. Because with a cock on open action, you are canting the rifle as you're opening it. So when you open it, you twist the rifle like this away. Versus with a cock on close action, as you're pushing the bolt forward, you are pushing the bolt forward and you can keep the sights lined up a little bit easier than with a cock on open rifle. Now, that's my personal experience. Your experiences may be different. The fourth thing I'd like to talk about on Lee Enfield rifles is the semi-pistol grip. Now, lots of military surplus rifles have semi-pistol grips. I just personally think that the Lee Enfield one is the most comfortable, and it just looks the coolest with the sharp edge right there. So I just think they're really neat, they're easy to grab onto, and you can pull the rifle into your shoulder a little bit easier. While we're talking about the grip, another thing that we should talk about is the safety. Now, what I like about this rifle is that I can actuate the safety while keeping my hand on the grip. Granted, I do need to break grip just a little bit from the trigger in order to do that, but I can use the safety with my firing hand like this. So if I'm aiming at my target with the safety engaged, which is back, I can aim at my target, flip it forward, and then be ready to shoot. Now, while Mauser safeties aren't horrible, if I want to do the same thing with my Mauser safety, I can kind of do it, but it can be stiff, but the easiest way to do it is just to get my hand up and slap it down. Again, not the worst safety in the world, but I do prefer the Lee Enfield. You can even contrast this with Mosin Nagants, which I'm going to have a hard time doing on camera. With this one, it has a quite heavy safety, but you need to pull it back and latch it like that. And then in order to get it ready to fire, you need to pull it out of that latch and straight forward again. It's kind of a two-handed operation, and it takes time. Honestly, with Mosin Nagants, I usually just keep the chamber empty until I'm ready to shoot. I do that in general anyway, but especially with Mauser Nagants, they're just really irritating. Carcano safeties aren't great either. You'll notice that right now it is in fire, and then to put it in safe, I move it up to that position there. So right there, the trigger is dead. Like that, it's ready to fire. So with all of those, it's not something that I can easily actuate from a firing grip. However, with a Lee Enfield, you can do it fairly simply. Number 6 is the M of SMLE, the short magazine Lee Enfield. Now, I really like two things about this magazine. The first one is that they are removable. So you just press the button right there inside of the trigger guard, and you can pull the magazine out like that. Now, these aren't really meant to be removed in combat. I mean, they were kind of designed for that originally, but it didn't end up really happening. Instead, you're just supposed to load them with stripper clips. However, the removable nature of these does make them easier to clean than some other military surplus rifles. I'm talking to you, Carcano. But I suppose if you do have some spare magazines on hand, you could switch them out like that. Now, these do require a little bit of fitment by moving the feed lips around, but you can make it work. However, I should also talk about that these magazines hold 10 rounds. Most military surplus rifles hold 5 or 6 rounds, so 10 is an improvement. In fact, rifles like this Ishapur 2A1, the magazine can hold 12 rounds. Side note, that's one of the ways that you can tell an original Ishapur 2A1 magazine from a reproduction is the reproductions only hold 10. But you can also look at the back right here and you'll see a serial number on original magazines. Both of my Ishapur 2A1s have original magazines. Now, are you going to need 10 rounds in a magazine in most modern contexts? No, but I also have never heard of a situation of somebody wanting less bullets. Usually we want more. Also, it's cool to open this action up and fill it with 2 stripper clips. It's just, you feel cool doing that. Now, the last thing that I would like to talk about is that Lee Enfield rifles are just unique. They are completely different than most rifles on the market. Now, even if you go to like your local Cabela's or gun store, you will find that most of the bolt-action rifles, like hunting rifles that you will find, are cock on open. So the fact that this is cock on close just means it's different than most people are used to. So you hand this to a rifle shooter that's not familiar with these in particular, and he's going to push the bolt forward until it stops, and then try and push it down. Nothing's going to happen. He's got to figure that out, and it's just cool because they are unique. Also, the 10-round magazine is unique for bolt-action rifles. Same thing with Lee Enfields have rear locking lugs, meaning that the locking surface on these rifles isn't in the chamber like most people are used to. Instead, it's all the way back here. Now, this does have some drawbacks, and that's for a future video, but as for the uniqueness of this rifle, that is completely different. If you look at the front, it looks like there's really no lockup unless you know what you're looking for. I'm not going to say they don't exist because I don't know every modern rifle. I don't know of a modern rifle that has rear locking lugs. One of the things that really made me want a Lee Enfield was the full-length stock. I just think the full-length stock is really cool. Again, has some drawbacks, but it makes this definitely a unique rifle from what most people are used to seeing. Speaking again from a military surplus rifle perspective, having the split stock right here where the stock and the forend are 2 separate pieces is also kind of strange. Now, other rifles definitely do that, but what is much more common is a one-piece stock like this Mauser, where the stock and forward part are all one piece except for the upper handguard. So quick review, my 10 reasons why Lee Enfields are better than other military surplus rifles starts with sights and trigger, then it comes down to the pistol grip and safety, cock on close, 10-round magazines, and then finally, I just think they're very unique rifles compared to many other rifles on the market. But what do you guys think? What are some reasons that you really like Lee Enfield rifles? Or what are some reasons that you really don't? I'd be interested to see those for my video in a couple weeks. In any case, I am very glad that I do not need to go into combat with this Lee Enfield, but I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John.
Named John.